Welcome, dear one. Tonight, we begin another quiet journey, one of many in this series called The Inner Return. These are stories that do not seek answers in loud places. They unfold not through grand events, but through stillness, through things not easily seen, through what happens in silence, in soft steps, and in hearts that have grown quiet. This evening's story is part of that path, a walk, not towards somewhere, but inward towards something already here, waiting beneath the noise. Outside the wooden temple hall, twilight has softened the outlines of all things. The stones beneath the colonnade are warm from the day, but cooling now under the hush of evening air. Incense still curls upward from the altar, a thin spiral of fragrance dissolving into the shadows. Lanterns are not yet lit. The sky holds the last embers of light, a blue so deep it feels like breath held between heartbeats. There is a monk walking slowly beneath the tamarind trees. His robe brushes lightly against the stone path. His hands rest easily by his sides. His feet do not falter, though his eyes do not see. He is blind, and yet he walks with no uncertainty, as if the earth rises gently to meet him. There is no tension in his brow, no cautious reach of cane or outstretched hand. He walks not because he must arrive anywhere, but because walking is what the body does when the heart is already still. The younger monks often watch him from a distance. They whisper not with disrespect, but with awe. How does he know where he is going? How can someone who sees nothing move like someone who sees everything tonight? One of them lingers longer than usual, sitting cross-legged at the foot of a pillar, his hands loosely clasped in his lap. He doesn't speak, not yet. He simply listens to the soft scuff of cloth and heel and the occasional whisper of breeze through Bodhi leaves. The older monk pauses beneath the long archway where the shadows pool deepest. He tilts his head slightly, as if feeling the shape of silence itself. He does not seem surprised by the presence of the boy nearby, nor does he reach for him. The quiet between them holds no expectation, just space, and into that space, the night begins to deepen slowly, like ink spreading in water. No words are exchanged, yet something settles, the way dust settles after being stirred, or the way a bell's last tone hovers in the chest long after the ringing has stopped. The blind monk turns slightly, facing the open path again. His breath is steady. His presence, even in stillness, feels like movement, a kind of walking that doesn't leave footprints, a kind of seeing that doesn't need eyes. The blind monk steps forward again. The sound of his sandals brushing stone is steady, patient. The younger monk watches him move, a silent tug inside his chest, part curiosity, part reverence, and something else he doesn't name. He rises to his feet and approaches, his own steps unsure, though he can see perfectly. When he reaches the older monk, he hesitates, then softly, he speaks. "May I walk with you tonight?" There is a pause, not of doubt, but of space. The blind monk turns his head toward the voice. He nods not with dependence, but with calm acceptance. His hand lifts, not to grasp, but simply to acknowledge. The younger monk does not take it. Instead, he walks beside him, just close enough that their robes sometimes brush in the breeze. And so they begin, two figures, one old, one young, one with eyes that no longer open, and one whose gaze constantly flickers across the world, never quite still. Yet tonight, in this moment, their steps slowly align. The older monk does not ask to be led. The younger one does not assume to guide. The temple grounds open before them like a scroll being slowly unrolled. Trees bow under the weight of their own leaves, and the night air is warm, still holding the scent of sandalwood from the midday offering. Somewhere nearby, a night bird stirs, then falls silent again. The younger monk wants to ask questions, how he walks without fear, how he knows where to step, but the questions feel too loud for this kind of night. Instead, he listens, and in the listening, something subtle begins to shift. The blind monk stops suddenly, placing his hand gently on the trunk of an old fig tree. His fingers rest lightly on the bark, as though reading a scripture written in texture. He does not speak, but the way he stands, so attuned, so unhurried, says more than words might. The younger monk mimics the gesture, placing his own hand beside the elder's. He expects to feel something warmth, wisdom, revelation, but instead he finds the quiet roughness of bark, the still pulse of a living thing that says nothing and yet has endured more seasons than memory can hold. And in that moment, he notices his own breath, slow, deep, unclenched. The elder begins walking again, and the younger follows, not ahead and not behind, side by side, like two boats on a river, moving with the same current, needing neither oar nor anchor. The night thickens gently, like a shawl laid across the shoulders of the world. Crickets sing their small songs, steady and low, as if humming the earth to sleep. The path curves near a grove, where tall trees lean together in quiet counsel. Here, the air feels older, more inward. They walk in silence, the blind monk and the boy, steps light as moths on stone. Then, without warning, the wind shifts, not fiercely, not violently, just enough to stir the trees into whisper. Leaves rattle like prayer beads shaken loose. A dry branch snaps underfoot. The novice startles, reaching instinctively toward the elder's arm, but the old monk does not waver. His foot has already found its next place. His balance is not the balance of sight, but of trust. The boy lowers his hand, unsure. "I thought you might stumble," he whispers, barely louder than the wind. The older monk doesn't stop walking. He only smiles, a quiet turning of the lips that barely stirs the skin. "We all stumble," he says, as if reciting a simple truth, not a warning, even those who see. They pass beneath a large sal tree whose branches sway like slow dancers. The blind monk lifts his chin, sensing the movement, not with his eyes, but through the way air flows differently against the skin when trees move overhead. His fingers gently trail through space, brushing nothing, yet perceiving everything. The younger monk watches, and something in him releases. He realizes he's been holding his breath, not just in this moment, but in many before it, always scanning, bracing, striving to walk the path perfectly, to get it right. And yet here is a man walking without sight, guided not by certainty, but by stillness. They pause at a place where the wind gathers in a bowl between the trees. The elder monk reaches down and lifts a small, fallen branch. He holds it out to the younger monk. It's dry, twisted, thus brittle. He presses it gently against his knee, and it snaps in two without effort. Then he kneels, feeling along the forest floor, and picks up a green twig, young, pliant. He bends it nearly double, but it does not break. He doesn't explain. He only places it in the novice's palm and continues walking. The boy stands there, cradling the soft resilience of the twig. No teaching was spoken, yet something deeper was shown. What bends does not break. What is rooted in presence does not need to resist the wind. And so he follows, steps quieter now, not cautious, just aware. The trees thin. The grove gives way to open earth, where the temple gardens begin, and the wind softens to a hush. A small fig tree stands alone near the edge of the path, its roots gripping the soil like an old hand cupping water. The blind monk slows, then stops beside it. He turns his face upward not to see the sky, but to feel it. There is no moon tonight, just a velvet dark canvas stretched wide above, untouched by silver, and yet he seems illuminated from within. The younger monk stops beside him, unsure whether to speak or simply stand. The silence is so complete now that even his thoughts feel louder than they should. He wants to know what the elder sees in this darkness. He wants to ask what he feels, what he knows, what it's like to move through life without eyes. But the questions catch in his throat like dust. The blind monk reaches out with both hands and places his palms on the rough bark of the fig tree, not to steady himself, not to lean, just to meet the tree where it is, as it is. His breath is deep and slow, and the boy hears it not just with his ears, but with the quietness that has grown between them. There is nothing to see, the elder finally says, not as a declaration, but as if observing a passing cloud. And in that nothing, something very still begins to move. The novice doesn't understand, not entirely, but he doesn't pull away. He presses his own hand to the tree beside the elder's, and together they rest there, two beings in silence, breathing with the same rhythm, bound not by sight or explanation, but by presence. In that stillness, he begins to notice what he had overlooked, the coolness of the bark beneath his fingers, the scent of crushed basil nearby, the way the tree hums not audibly, but with a slow, living pulse, like the echo of a drum struck long ago. He notices his own breath again, softer now, his shoulders no longer high, his jaw no longer tight. There is a teaching unfolding here, but it comes not in words. It comes in the space where words are not needed, where silence is not empty, but full. The blind monk lowers his hands and steps away, continuing down the path without hurry. The younger monk lingers for a moment more, hand still on the bark, as though some invisible door has opened not outward, but inward. He turns and follows, unsure whether he is learning something new or simply remembering something ancient. The temple path winds back toward the cloister, but now it feels different, not shorter, not longer, just quieter inside. The stones underfoot are the same, and yet the younger monk notices them more fully now, the way one is slightly raised, the way another carries a faint curve worn by time. The blind monk walks ahead, not leading, not following, simply continuing. They do not speak, and still, something has been said. At one point, The younger monk glances back. The earth behind them shows no trace of their passage, no prints pressed into dust, no crushed leaves. It's as if the night itself has closed around their steps, like water healing where it was parted. He wants to ask, how can someone leave no mark, yet change so much, but again, he finds the question dissolving, not from forgetfulness, but from peace. Some answers are not meant to be spoken, they are meant to be walked. The elder stops just before the cloister steps. He turns slightly, as though looking not at the novice, but through him to the stillness behind his thoughts. You don't need to know where the path leads, he says softly, just how to walk it. And with that, he disappears into the shadows of the temple hall, robe folding into the dark like smoke into wind. The novice remains outside, standing beneath a sky still without moon. His eyes adjust to the night, but more than that, something within him settles. He places one hand over his chest and feels the quiet there, not silence from emptiness, but from understanding. Behind him, a single paper lantern flickers in the breeze. It was hung earlier by another monk, a ritual for those who wander at night. The novice turns, noticing that the lantern's soft light doesn't shine outward onto the path, but inward, back toward the alcove of the hall. He watches it for a long while, then he steps toward it, drawn not by clarity, but by stillness. And far from the temple grounds, where vines twist around stone and sunlight rarely touches the earth, there is a cave, not grand, not deep, just wide enough for a man to sit. And in that cave, facing its own shadows, sits a hermit with a single lantern, one that never points outward. They say he was once a traveler, a seeker who followed every light he could find. But eventually, every road felt too crowded, every teaching too loud. So he stopped walking. He found the cave and the silence and the inward flicker of a flame that asked nothing of the world. Tonight, we sit with him, not to learn his answers, but to feel how he questions. The lantern he keeps is not for showing the path. It is for seeing what lies behind the eyes. And so our next story begins, not in movement, but in stillness, just as every fire begins, not with wood, but with the willingness to be warm. There is a bend in the forest where the vines grow so thick they hush even the wind. Stones lie scattered like forgotten thoughts, worn smooth by time and rain. And in the shade of that bend, there is a cave not deep, not wide, but shaped just enough to hold a man and his silence. The hermit sits at its mouth, legs crossed, hands resting lightly on his knees. His robe is simple, the color of earth after long rain. Behind him, the walls of the cave breathe cool air. Before him, the jungle breathes with life. He watches neither. He is not turned toward the forest, or the sky, or the path that once led him here. He sits as if listening not to sound, but to something beneath sound. There is a lantern beside him, small, clay-bodied. Its flame is steady despite the breeze, burning low with oil made from pressed fruit seeds and ash. It does not light the path beyond the cave. It does not guide travelers, does not signal anyone passing. It faces inward, toward the cave wall, casting its glow not outward, but into shadow. They say the hermit once walked with monks and kings alike, that he debated under banyan trees, taught in courtyards, walked roads lined with eager students, but one day he stopped speaking, he stopped traveling, not out of bitterness or fatigue, but because the noise within him had grown louder than anything outside. He came here, to this small hollow in the hill, carrying nothing but his bowl and the lantern, and here he has remained, not waiting, not retreating, simply dwelling in stillness. There is a bird that visits him often, a dark-throated myna that perches on a nearby branch. Always alone, it sings short, clipped phrases, as if forgetting its tune mid-song. The hermit does not look toward it. He simply listens. He does not count days. He does not mark seasons, but those who pass through the forest wood-gatherers, hunters, monks walking from village to village, speak of the light they glimpse through the vines. A strange thing, they say, a lantern that glows without pointing the way. Most do not stop, but sometimes one does. A wanderer who has grown tired of following other people's paths, one who no longer needs to be shown where to go, but wishes only to rest where they are. Tonight, such a traveler approaches, barefoot, with dust on his ankles and the quiet ache of too many questions beneath his breath. He doesn't call out, he only bows, just once, and sits down across from the hermit on stone still warm from the day. Between them, the lantern burns. It flickers slightly, not from wind, but from recognition. The traveler sits cross-legged, uncertain of where to place his hands. They hover above his knees, then settle, fingers slightly curled. His eyes move from the hermit's stillness to the flicker of the lantern, and then back again, but nothing changes. The forest does not hush in reverence. The hermit does not glance up. The flame does not grow brighter in welcome. And yet, the traveler does not feel unwelcome, only unfamiliar, like someone stepping into a room where no one speaks, but everything listens. He studies the lantern. Its flame is low, held by a wick barely visible, the clay pot no larger than a cupped palm. Its light falls inward, illuminating only the back wall of the cave, where the shadows shift softly but reveal nothing. No teachings carved into stone, no symbols, just bare rock, and a single pool of orange gold that wavers like breath held too long. Time passes without measure. A leaf drops behind them. A frog clicks its throat twice, then falls silent. The traveler feels the weight of all the voices he's carried, the ones he's chased, the ones he's tried to silence. They echo inside him now, not as shouts, but as whispers that never found rest. He leans forward, just slightly, and speaks. "Why does your lantern face the wall?" The hermit doesn't answer, not with words, but the flame answers. It flickers once, leans inward, and steadies again. The traveler watches, half expecting disappointment to rise. He came looking for something. After all, a teaching, a sentence to carry back, but none comes. And still, he doesn't leave. He remembers the last teacher he sat with kind eyes, full of metaphors. That teacher spoke of rivers and mountains, of letting go, of sitting still like a boulder in floodwater. But even then, something inside the traveler kept moving, kept resisting. He followed the next teacher, and the next, and the one after that. And now, here he is, sitting in front of a man who offers no words, only a lantern that refuses to show him the path. The hermit shifts slightly, not to speak, but to adjust the way he breathes. It's subtle, barely more than a ripple, but the traveler notices. He notices how the hermit's inhale is soft, but not shallow, how the exhale disappears into the forest air without force, and suddenly the traveler becomes aware of his own breath, ragged, held in, then pushed out too quickly, like someone trying to make space by forcing emptiness. He softens. He doesn't know why, but he softens. His eyes no longer search the cave wall. They rest there, on the dull stone behind the flame, and in that resting, the questions begin to lose their urgency. Not vanish, just settle, like dust on a still bowl. The flame flickers, steady but soft, casting shapes along the wall that mean nothing and yet somehow feel familiar. The traveler sits motionless now, not from discipline, but from something gentler, something like surrender. He doesn't know how long it's been. He no longer counts time in moments, only in breaths. In his lap, his hands form a bowl without thinking, palms curved, thumbs touching, as if waiting to receive, but nothing is placed there, and slowly he realizes the truth. This gesture is not meant to be filled. It is meant to remind him that he is already holding too much. His shoulders ache, not from the sitting, but from the stories he has carried, stories of where he was supposed to go, who he was meant to become, which footsteps were right, which thoughts were wrong, and always the silent command to arrive somewhere other than here. The hermit still has not spoken. His posture has not changed. His face remains calm, neither inviting nor distant. He simply exists, like the stone of the cave itself, present, unadorned, unconcerned with whether he is understood. The traveler closes his eyes, not to meditate, not to seek, just to stop reaching. And in that darkness, he sees something not a vision, but a memory of something too quiet to notice until now. A time as a child when he held an empty cup beneath a rain gutter during monsoon. He had tried to catch the water, drop by drop, holding the cup so carefully, but it never filled. The water danced past, spilled over, evaporated in the heat of his hands. He had cried then, not because the water was gone, but because he didn't know why it wouldn't stay. Now, sitting in this cave, he understands. The cup was never meant to catch the rain. It was meant to feel it. He opens his eyes. The lantern still burns. The wall still receives its light without changing. The hermit still breathes like a tree that no longer fears being broken. And the traveler exhales not with effort, not with expectation, just gently, like something that has held on too long, letting go. No questions come, no answers follow, only stillness. And in that stillness, a small warmth begins to grow, not from the fire, not from the air, but from somewhere inside his own chest. Like a lantern that has been waiting to be lit from within, the wind brushes the cave's edge but does not enter. Leaves stir in the trees above, their sound distant, like the turning of pages in a book the forest has long since memorized. The traveler remains seated, though his spine no longer strains to stay upright. His body feels lighter now, not as if it has changed, but as if something unseen has uncoiled from within. The hermit reaches forward, not to extinguish the flame, but to adjust the wick. It is a small motion, careful, practiced, tender, the kind of care given not out of duty, but out of intimacy, the way one might tend to an old friend, or a wound that no longer hurts, but still deserves gentleness. The flame steadies once more, casting the same inward light, no brighter, no dimmer, just the same small presence, always burning toward silence. The traveler watches, and for the first time, he feels no impulse to ask what it means. He does not ask why the lantern faces inward. He does not wonder whether he should sit longer or leave. The part of him that always needed instruction has grown quiet. He shifts slightly, feeling the coolness of the stone beneath him. The sound of his own breath is now a companion, not a distraction. He feels it move through him the way wind moves through bamboo without resistance, without needing to linger. A thought rises that perhaps the lantern is not there to reveal what is outside or even what is hidden, but simply to remind one that light does not have to travel to be real, that a flame need not perform to be complete. And he thinks, too, of the many lanterns he had followed before, the teachings that promised insight, the voices that glowed brightly but turned hollow when he drew near. He had always thought the problem was him, that he could not understand, that he was not ready. But now, sitting here, he sees it differently. Maybe the path was never meant to be lit ahead. Maybe it was meant to grow clearer only as each step disappears behind you. The hermit lifts the lantern and turns it slightly, not to face the traveler, but to angle it just enough that the traveler's own face catches its warmth. The flame remains pointed inward, but now its glow reaches outward, just enough to touch the corner of another's being. Not to teach, not to lead, just to share warmth. The traveler does not smile, not outwardly, but something softens, deeply. And for the first time in many nights, he no longer wonders where he is going. Night thickens again beyond the trees, folding gently over stone and root. The jungle, once restless with whispers and wings, has settled into its slow breathing. The flame in the cave burns low now, not out of weariness, but as if it knows its work has been done not through words, but through presence. The traveler remains seated, unmoving, yet no longer still from effort. Something within him has stopped reaching, not because it gave up, because it returned. The hermit places the lantern back on the stone beside him. He does not speak, he does not gesture, he does not ask the traveler to stay or to leave. And the traveler understands there is nothing more to receive, because nothing was ever withheld. He rises slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet that now moves with him like a second robe. His steps are soft, not because the path is sacred, but because he has stopped needing to know where it begins or ends. At the edge of the grove, he pauses. The cave behind him fades into shadow, the flame no longer visible, but he does not look back. The light is inside now, and in another part of the forest, where the air grows dense with memory and the roots of old trees stretch deeper than stories can reach. There is a grove, not hidden, not revealed, simply there, waiting. And at its center, there stands a tree, no longer young, not yet fallen, a Bodhi tree whose branches curve wide like arms that remember every pilgrim who sat beneath them. Its bark bears no inscription. Its leaves do not whisper secrets, but it has seen much. At its base is a man. He is not a teacher, not a monk, not even a hermit. He is simply the one who tends to the tree, sweeps the fallen leaves, fills the offering bowls, lights the lamps that no one thanks. They call him the grove keeper. He does not teach, but the stillness he carries speaks in the language of trees, slow, unhurried, patient beyond reason. And soon we will sit with him, not because he offers wisdom, but because he has spent so long in silence. Even the wind listens when it passes through his hands. For now, let the dust of the path settle. Let the lantern grow dark. Let your breath soften like soil after rain. And when you're ready, we'll return to the grove to listen to the tree that has watched for centuries. The sun does not reach this part of the forest quickly. It comes slowly, as if bowing before entering. Even the birds grow quieter when they pass above this grove. The air here is thick, not with heat or scent, but with memory. And in the middle of it stands the tree. Its trunk is wide, its bark rough but steady. The roots twist into the soil like slow rivers sinking deep into earth that has never been turned. It is a Bodhi tree, old, quiet, unshaken. Its leaves shimmer even when the wind is still, as if recalling some motion from long ago. At its base, a man sweeps. His robes are simple, faded with time and dust. He does not sweep with urgency, nor with ritual, only with attention, the kind that sees each leaf not as debris, but as something that once reached toward the sun. His broom is handmade, the handle darkened by use, the bristles frayed but intact. With every stroke, the ground clears, but the silence deepens. He is the grove keeper. No one remembers when he arrived. No one remembers him leaving. Some say he has always been there, that the tree grew more patient in his presence, that the earth beneath his feet forgot how to grow weeds. He does not chant, he does not preach, but when he moves, the dust does not rise in protest, it settles, as if grateful to be placed gently back where it belongs. Sometimes pilgrims come, they kneel beneath the tree, some cry, some offer flowers or coins or rice. The grove keeper does not interrupt. He stands a few paces away, broom in hand, eyes lowered not out of avoidance, but reverence. He knows this is not his moment, it is theirs. And when they leave, he steps forward again, gathers the fallen petals, returns the bowls, resumes the sweeping, as if to say all things bloom, all things pass, all things return. This morning, a small boy enters the grove. His feet are bare, his steps uncertain. He carries no offerings, only a look in his eyes wide, searching, not yet burdened by knowing. He does not speak, but he does not leave either. He watches the old man sweep, watches the leaves fall, watches the dust settle again and again. And for the first time in his short life, He wonders if stillness is not the absence of movement, but the presence of something deeper. The boy remains at the edge of the grove, half hidden behind a crooked trunk where moss grows like old laughter. He does not call out. He does not move closer, yet his presence is not lost on the grove keeper. The old man does not glance his way. His hands continue their motion broom, sweeping in slow arcs across the earthen floor, clearing what has already fallen, preparing space for what will fall next. The boy watches this rhythm with the hush of someone who senses that speaking might disturb something more important than words. The grove keeper pauses, not to rest, but to empty the pan he carries beside him. He bends with care, empties the dust into the roots of the Bodhi tree, and stands again in a single motion, so smooth it seems to echo 1,000 times into the silence. The boy steps forward now, not bold, not shy, just honest in his movement, like a leaf carried forward by wind it cannot name. He stops a few paces away. The two of them stand there, one broom in hand, one heart in hand, neither reaching, neither retreating. Finally, the boy speaks, his voice small and round. "Why do you sweep if the leaves keep falling?" The grove keeper looks at him for the first time. His gaze is steady, not heavy. It lands like moonlight, not like fire. He does not answer right away. He looks down at the broom, then at the ground, then back toward the boy. His voice, when it comes, is soft and without urgency. So the earth remembers its shape. The boy frowns, not from disagreement, but from not yet understanding. The grove keeper returns to his sweeping, but now the boy sees it differently. He notices how the broom never lifts too high, never digs too deep. It does not scatter the dust, only redirects it. He notices how the man does not rush to clear the space. He does not aim for perfection. He simply tends. And with each motion, something in the boy's own thoughts begins to settle. The buzzing, the darting questions, the restless wonderings, none are answered, but they grow quieter. He sits cross-legged on a low stone near the tree, watching the way the morning light filters through the canopy above. The leaves shift, some fall. The grove keeper does not look up. He simply changes the angle of the broom. The boy does not know what he's learning, but he senses that whatever it is, it does not need to be named to be known. The sweeping continues. The earth breathes, and somewhere inside the boy, a question he did not know he carried begins to rest. The boy remains where he is, legs tucked beneath him, arms resting loosely in his lap. Around him, the grove continues its soft unfolding. A leaf spins slowly as it falls, catching a thread of light before landing soundlessly on the swept earth. The grove keeper no longer looks at the boy, but neither has he turned away. His body faces the tree, his broom now idle, resting against the crook of his arm. He stands very still, as if waiting for something, though there is nothing else to do. The tree looms above them, both not towering, not imposing, but present in the way only things that have seen centuries can be present. Its bark holds the color of ash and time. Its roots are deep enough to remember drought, rain, prayers, and silence. The boy watches the old man, then he watches the tree, then both, and suddenly he is not sure which is which. He opens his mouth, then hesitates, then speaks. Does the tree remember everyone who sits here? The grove keeper says nothing. His eyes are half closed, not from fatigue, but from something else, perhaps listening, not to the boy, to the space between the question and the next breeze. And in that silence, the boy understands the tree does not remember names. It remembers weight, breath, warmth where someone sat, the way their grief settled into the roots, or how their joy flickered up the branches before being carried off by wind. He imagines all the people who must have come here, old women, travelers, monks, children. He wonders how many sat in this same place, asking the same questions, expecting something from the stillness. The grove keeper walks toward the base of the tree. He kneels. With both hands, he gathers a few of the newly fallen leaves, not to discard them, but to lay them gently in a small heap near the trunk. He smooths the soil with his palm, not as a task, as a gesture. The boy watches this and realizes something he cannot explain. This man is not tending the tree. He is in relationship with it, not as one cares for a possession, but as one cares for a friend who never speaks and yet always understands. The wind stirs again. The leaves shimmer. The air shifts, but does not move. And the boy, for the first time, feels that he is not in a place of worship, nor a place of learning, but in a place that has stopped needing to become anything other than what it is. He lowers his gaze, not in shame, in reverence, not for the tree, not for the grove keeper, but for the stillness itself. The sun has risen higher now, its light filtering through the leaves in soft fragments, dappled and shifting. The boy's shadow has grown long behind him, but he does not notice. His gaze is still settled near the base of the tree, where the grove keeper now places a small clay bowl, not to receive offerings, but to catch falling leaves. There is no ceremony, no chant, just a quiet placing of the bowl against the earth, as if to say even what falls has somewhere to rest. The boy leans forward slightly, drawn not by curiosity, but by calm. Is the bowl for the tree, he asks, his voice barely louder than a breath. The grove keeper, still kneeling, runs a hand over the smooth rim. He speaks without turning. It's not to collect. He says, it's to witness. The boy blinks, but it looks empty. A pause. Then the grove keeper places his palm flat on the ground beside the bowl. It's never empty. It holds everything the tree has let go. The boy stares at the bowl, at the single leaf now curled inside it, at the shadows it catches, at the light that lingers just long enough before moving on, and he begins to see it isn't about how much is in the bowl, it's about the space it offers. He looks at his own hands. He remembers how tightly he'd gripped things, answers, fears, names, memories. And now, for the first time, he imagines his palms like the bowl open, not asking, just ready. The grove keeper stands again. His knees creak softly, but his body holds no strain. He returns to his sweeping, not because the grove needs it, but because it is his way of listening, of staying close to what matters without clutching it. The boy rises too, stretching his legs with quiet care. He does not speak again. There are no more questions that need forming. He simply walks a little closer to the bowl and sits beside it. Above them, the tree stirs. A leaf loosens, twists, falls. It lands just outside the bowl this time, brushing the rim like a bell being rung with a whisper. The boy doesn't move to place it inside. He understands now it's not about gathering, it's about letting be. And the grove keeper, though his eyes never lift, seems to smile not with his face, but with the rhythm of his sweeping. The grove holds them both. The tree continues its slow watching, and somewhere between the light and the dust, a lesson is being carried, not taught, not spoken, just carried. The afternoon light begins to slope gently through the trees, casting long shadows like brushstrokes across the forest floor. The grove keeper has finished his sweeping. The broom now rests against the Bodhi tree, and he stands beside it, not watching, not waiting, simply being. The boy sits nearby, the clay bowl between them, now holding 3 leaves and a soft sheen of golden dust. Nothing moves quickly, nothing needs to. The boy draws his fingers slowly across the soil. He is not thinking, not shaping thought into words. He is only feeling the warmth of the earth, the hush of the branches above, the presence of the tree not towering, not teaching, but enduring in the way only stillness can. The grove keeper kneels once more, not to sweep, but to press his palms flat to the ground in silence. The boy copies him without instruction, 2 sets of hands resting on the same earth, 2 hearts settling into the same rhythm. And in that quiet moment, the boy understands that nothing has been taught, and yet something has been passed on, not like a torch, more like a breath. He stands without needing to say goodbye. The grove keeper does not look up, but the tree seems to lean ever so slightly, as if bowing not in farewell, but in acknowledgement. And somewhere far from the grove, beyond fields and rivers and the hum of evening insects, the rains are beginning to fall. Not loudly, not with force, but with the hush of something long awaited. In a bamboo-roofed hut tucked into the edge of a clearing, an old monk listens to the first drops tap gently against the eaves. He sits alone, no disciples, no visitors, only the sound of water and the quiet inside his bones. It is the final rains retreat, the last season of stillness he will keep before his body returns to dust. But he does not grieve. He does not grasp. He watches the water gather in bowls outside, watches it ripple without urgency, and he remembers every life is like a rain season. It comes, it rests, and it passes. But some rains do not fall to be seen. Some rains fall without sound. And so we follow him next, to listen to that rain, to sit beside a life that is ready to let go, not with sorrow, but with softness. Our next story begins here. The rain that fell without sound. A story from the final rain retreat. The sky is heavy, but not dark. A sheet of silver stretches over the clearing, not with threat, but with promise. The trees are quiet, their leaves tilted upward, sensing what is to come, and beneath the wide eaves of a small bamboo hut, an old monk sits, watching the sky as one might watch a friend cross a distant field knowing they are near, knowing they will arrive in their own time. The hut is simple, a thatched roof, walls woven from dried leaves and reed. Inside, nothing rests unused: a folded robe, a low cushion, a wooden bowl still damp from the morning wash. The monk owns little, and even less that he clings to. He has seen many seasons, heard many rains, but this one feels different. Outside, on the earth, packed smooth by decades of walking, 3 alms bowls sit in a row. Their mouths face the sky, not to ask, not to beg, but to be ready. Drops begin to fall, not in torrents, just single sounds at first, as if the clouds are exhaling slowly after holding breath too long. The monk does not move. His eyes remain soft, half lowered, as he listens. There is no chanting, no teaching, only the hush of water meeting metal, the hollow tap that echoes briefly, then fades. He has entered the rain's retreat many times before, in forest monasteries and mountain caves, in busy halls, and in silence so deep it swallowed even thought. But this retreat, he knows, will be the last, not because of illness, not because of sorrow, simply because the body is old now, and the rhythm of impermanence hums more clearly in his bones than ever before, and yet there is no fear. He reaches for a small cloth and lays it across his knees, not to shield against rain, but to anchor his hands. They rest there, still and warm, like 2 leaves fallen onto a stone path, no longer reaching, no longer holding on. Outside, the bowls begin to fill. The rain does not rush, it does not pour. It arrives with the gentleness of something that no longer needs to be heard. And in the stillness of that hut, with the scent of wet soil rising and the faint crackle of leaves beyond the door, the old monk closes his eyes. Not to sleep, not to escape, just to meet this moment more fully, with nothing left to resist. The rain deepens, not louder, just fuller. It gathers on the leaves of banana trees, collects in the corners of roof thatch, pools gently in the folds of upturned petals just outside the hut. Each drop lands without urgency. There is no storm, only the patient weight of water returning to earth. Inside, the old monk sits unmoving. His hands still rest beneath the cloth across his lap. The cloth itself has darkened in places where the humidity clings, softening it, like time softened stone. His breathing is slow, not cultivated, simply allowed, the kind of breath that does not belong to the body, but to the moment itself. He remembers other rains, one in particular, many decades ago, when he was still young in robes, still trying to understand the teachings with his mind rather than his marrow. He had been frustrated that year, eager to achieve insight, to grasp the formless with effort. The rain had poured for days, and he had sat restlessly, counting hours, measuring his meditation, seeking some sign of arrival. But nothing came, no vision, no peace, only rain. One morning, he had burst from the kuti and shouted into the forest, "What more must I do?" And the rain had answered not with speech, but with its continued falling. He had dropped to his knees then, soaked, angry, ashamed, and in that very moment, he had noticed something the bowls outside his kuti had filled while he was inside struggling, filled without being asked, without being watched. They had simply received. It had taken him years to understand what that meant, and many more to stop forgetting it. Now, in this final season, he remembers without reaching. He receives without asking. He is no longer trying to hold anything, not even the memory. Outside, a small frog clambers onto the lip of one of the bowls. Its eyes blink slowly. It is still enough that rain gathers on its back before slipping down its legs like blessings. The monk watches it briefly, then lowers his gaze again. There is no separation, not between him and the frog, not between his breath and the falling rain. He shifts slightly, adjusting the cloth across his knees, not out of discomfort, but as a gesture of continued care. Even now, with his body growing thinner, with his skin lined like cracked clay, he moves with tenderness, not as one trying to preserve, but as one honoring what has always been passing. There is a kind of letting go that is noisy, marked by decision, effort, declarations. But this is not that kind. This is the kind of letting go that happens so gently. No one notices it has already begun. And still, the rain falls. The rain does not pause. It continues in its quiet rhythm, tapping softly against the bamboo slats above, sliding down the corners of the hut like a stream remembering how to flow. The sound is not one of intrusion, but of companionship. There is a kind of kindness in this rain, a presence that does not push, does not claim, only surrounds. The old monk lifts his gaze slightly. A bead of water clings to the edge of the inner roof beam. It grows fat and clear, reflecting the flicker of a single candle burning near the door. Then it falls not onto the floor, but into a small dish placed there long ago, precisely for this purpose. He had placed that bowl years earlier, in a season when the roof still leaked, not out of frustration, but with the same calm he applied to every task, not to stop the dripping, but to receive it. And now, though the roof no longer leaks, the bowl remains, still empty, still ready. He smiles faintly, not at the bowl, but at what it taught him, that sometimes fixing a problem is not as important as learning how to meet it without resistance. The roof had been patched in time, but it was the bowl that taught him how to wait. The candle flickers. Not from wind there is none, only from the breath of the room itself. Spaces have their own life. This hut, this season, this rain, they are not scenes in a story. They are characters in a farewell that does not call itself goodbye. The monk shifts the cushion beneath him with one slow hand. His joints are stiff now, but he moves with the same deliberateness he once offered to temple rituals. No motion is wasted. No gesture needs witness. He thinks of the students who once asked him for teachings. Some expected profound answers, long metaphors, powerful truths. Others wanted comfort, wanted to be told they were doing well. He gave what he could, but never more than the moment offered. He wonders now if they ever understood that his greatest teachings were not in his words, but in the space between them, in how he paused, in how he poured tea, in how he swept his kuti floor without needing to clear every speck. Outside, the frogs continue their quiet vigil. A breeze moves through the trees, gentle as breath across sleeping skin. The monk closes his eyes again, not from weariness, but from fullness. There is nothing left to adjust, nothing left to reach for. Even the bowl that once caught the roof's dripping is now just a bowl. Still here, still open, still enough. Evening approaches without sharpness. It does not fall, it settles. The light begins to dim, not suddenly, but as a gradual hush moving across the sky. The monk feels it, not as darkness, but as softness. The edges of things blur the line between day and night, between breath and stillness, between self and world. He lights a second candle, not to chase away the dusk, but to greet it. The flame catches with a dry whisper, joining the first in quiet companionship. He places it near the door, though the door itself has no hinges, no lock, only a curtain of woven reeds drawn to the side. It has never needed closing. For all his years in the forest, the monk has never feared visitors, nor has he sought them. Those who came were welcome. Those who passed by unnoticed were not missed. The hut was never a refuge from the world. It was simply a place where nothing was demanded of it. Tonight, no visitors arrive, only the rain, and yet the hut feels full, the way a teacup feels full, not from being poured, but from having waited long enough. He glances at the bowls outside once more. They glisten, now nearly full. The water they hold is clear, untroubled. He does not move to bring them in. He knows that the rain, too, has its way of knowing when to stop. His hands move to his knees again, fingers gently curled. He feels the creak in his joints, the slight tremble of his left leg, the quiet of his spine settling into stillness. There is no resistance, not even acceptance, only what is. For a moment, he listens deeply, not with ears, but with the whole of his being. He hears no voices, no memories, no thoughts demanding shape, only the rhythm of rain meeting leaf, leaf meeting earth, earth offering it all back again. And in that moment, he senses something he cannot name, not arrival, not departure, just presence, full and empty at once. There had been a time when he thought enlightenment would arrive like thunder, that it would split the self open, pour light through the cracks. But now, in this small hut, surrounded by water, firelight, and silence, he understands it arrives like this. Not with sound, not with proof, just with the soft knowing that there is nothing more to carry. The curtain flutters slightly. A drop rolls down the bamboo frame and disappears into the floor. The rain slows, but does not end, and the door, though never shut, feels more open than ever. The candles have burned low. Their flames grow smaller, flickering like thoughts that no longer insist on being finished. The rain outside has softened to mist, more presence than sound. Drops still fall, but they no longer announce themselves. They arrive and disappear in the same breath. The old monk breathes in. His chest rises gently, then lowers without effort. The cushion beneath him has flattened from long sitting, but he does not adjust. He has become part of it now, part of the hut, part of the air, part of the waiting that no longer waits. A single drop slides down the bamboo wall, finds its way to the floor, and rests in a shallow groove, worn by time and repetition. It does not move again. It does not need to. The bowls outside are full. The frog has left. The light no longer reaches the inside of the hut, but he does not need it to. There is nothing more to do, no final thought to offer, no last word, only this breath, then another. And when he exhales again, something leaves with it, quietly, completely, like the last ripple fading from a still bowl of water. The hut remains, the bowls remain, the rain, too, remains, though now it falls without sound, and there is no one inside counting the drops. And elsewhere, perhaps not far, perhaps just beyond the next tree or memory, there is a small kuti on a hillside where another monk sits cross-legged on a straw mat. It is old, frayed at the edges, and one corner won't stay flat. It folds slightly, no matter how carefully he tucks it down. He has tried to fix it many times, smoothed it again and again, wondered if this small imperfection is a sign of his restless mind, wondered why he cannot sit in peace like the others. But tonight, as the candlelight leans against the wall and the silence settles once more into its place beside him, he looks at the folded corner and does not reach for it. He lets it be. This is where we sit next, on a mat that won't quite stay even, in the company of a monk who is learning, slowly, that stillness does not always mean symmetry. Our final story in this circle is the straw mat with one corner folded, a story of imperfect mindfulness. The mat had been with him since the beginning, given to him by his first teacher, passed from one kuti to another, across years and retreats and seasons that blurred like lantern light in fog. It was made of straw, rough in some places, worn smooth in others. And always, no matter how many times he sat, bowed, folded, and unfolded, it had one corner that curled just slightly, enough to catch his eye whenever he tried to still his thoughts. The monk now sat cross-legged upon it once again, the same corner, folded just so, tilted upward like a question that refused to lie flat. He had pressed it down before sitting, as always, but after a few breaths, it had lifted again, as always. Outside, the forest was still, not from absence of life, but from balance. The cicadas had quieted with the coming dusk. The wind had paused, as if giving space to something older than sound. Inside the small hut, everything was in place. A bowl beside the door, a folded robe near the wall, a lamp burning with a quiet flame, and in the center of it all, the monk sat, still, aware, watching not the world, but what rose within him. And yet, again, his eye drifted to the corner, the fold, the one imperfection that tugged at his attention like a child pulling gently at a sleeve. He had once believed that to be mindful was to bring everything into order, to smooth each crease, to align breath, thought, body, and cushion as though they were strings on a lute. Only perfect tuning would allow silence to sing. But the mat would not comply, and neither, he had come to realize, would his thoughts, or his memories, or his longing to be entirely without longing. Tonight, he did not reach for the corner. He let it curl. He let it speak, and something inside him began to listen not to the imperfection itself, but to his own soft resistance to it, the way his chest tensed slightly, his jaw holding an old habit, the subtle way his breath caught, as though still chasing some imagined ideal of perfect peace. He exhaled, no, not to release anything, just to feel what was already being let go. The mat remained uneven, the hut remained silent, and the monk, for the first time in a long while, felt like he was not failing to be mindful. He was simply sitting with the truth that even stillness had its creases. The night thickened slowly, not with weight, but with presence. The candle flame leans slightly as a hush moves through the forest, the kind of quiet that doesn't ask for reverence, but receives it anyway. Inside the hut, the monk remains seated, spine straight but not rigid, eyes lowered, breath moving like water beneath still ice. The corner of the mat remains curled. A small shadow clings to it now, cast by the soft flicker of the lamp. It looks almost like a petal, slightly lifted by a breeze that never came. He remembers how, in earlier years, he would lose entire hours to that corner. He would fix it, press it, fold it under, rearrange the entire mat just to tame that one defiant edge. And when it lifted again, sometimes within minutes, his mind would follow it upward into irritation, then effort, then shame. How could one sit in awareness when the very ground beneath them refused stillness? But now he sees more clearly. It wasn't the mat that demanded correction. It was the part of him that could not yet sit beside imperfection without trying to erase it. He breathes in. The scent of old straw and faint ash lingers in the air. His fingertips rest lightly on his knees. He does not press down. He does not grip. There is a small thread frayed at the edge of the mat. It dances slightly in the air. Once, he would have pulled it neat into the edge, trimmed the flaw, but tonight, he watches it move, not because it's beautiful, not because it's symbolic, simply because it is what is present. And isn't that the heart of it? Mindfulness that seeks to control is only another kind of grasping, but mindfulness that can sit with the unaligned, the imperfect, the unresolved that is something softer, wiser. It does not declare understanding. It waits, it watches, it joins. A gecko clicks from the thatch above. A leaf falls just outside the open doorway. Nothing startles, nothing distracts. Each moment enters and exits like a visitor who needs no introduction. The monk shifts his weight slightly, not to adjust posture, but to honor comfort. He has learned that discipline without kindness is another form of pride. The mat beneath him creaks faintly, and the corner flutters just a little more, still curled, still uneven, still speaking. And for once, he does not try to silence it. The hours drift without measure. The night outside has thickened to its darkest point, yet the monk does not light another lamp. The small flame remains, steady but soft, casting enough light to see the straw mat, the folds of his robe, the smoothness of the floor worn down by years of sitting. The curled corner of the mat glows faintly in that light, a small arc of imperfection illuminated not as flaw, but as feature. He gazes toward it now with the same gentleness he once reserved only for his breath. He had once been taught that the path required precision, that awareness was sharp like a blade, cutting through illusion cleanly and completely. And for a time, he had chased that sharpness. He sat straighter, breathed quieter, watched thoughts with surgical attention. He tried to be perfect in his practice. He tried to become invisible to suffering by mastering discipline. But perfection had made him brittle. When life bent, he cracked. It was only years later, after illness forced him to lie down for days, unable to meditate in any formal posture, unable even to recite chants aloud, that he began to understand a different kind of mindfulness, the kind that did not need to perform, the kind that did not stand tall, but knelt gently beside whatever arose. The candle flickers once. He adjusts nothing. He notices the slight ache in his back, the way one foot has begun to numb, the wandering thoughts about the woodpile, the cracked bowl near the doorway, the squirrel that lives in the thatch above his head. None of it is a problem. None of it needs to be pushed away. He shifts slightly, allowing space in his joints, and the mat beneath him sighs with the sound of straw accepting weight. The corner flutters again, a soft curl in a world that rarely folds cleanly. A breeze moves through the open window. It carries no scent, no message, just the night's quiet breath, and the monk, rather than return his focus to his breath, lets the wind be his breath, lets the mat be his teacher, lets the moment be whole, even as it wobbles. Outside, somewhere far down the path, a branch cracks under the weight of something unseen. He does not react. The sound is not a disturbance. It is simply another part of now. And in the silence that follows, he realizes there is a kind of peace that comes not from fixing what is crooked, but from learning how to sit with it. He smiles barely, not out of triumph, out of relief. The mat is still uneven, but he is no longer trying to flatten what was never meant to be straight. The candle burns lower now. Its flame has shrunk into a quiet glow that no longer reaches the corners of the hut. The shadows grow longer, gentler, blurring the hard lines of wall and floor, of bowl and broom. The mat beneath the monk remains slightly uneven, the corner still curled, and yet the room feels whole. He shifts again, not to improve his posture, but to honor it. His back relaxes slightly, shoulders softening the way soil does after rain. The position he now holds would not be praised in a hall of strict meditation. His knees are no longer pressed firmly into the mat. His hands rest unevenly, one slightly higher than the other, but he does not move to correct it. There had been a time when his practice was full of tiny corrections, adjusting the tilt of the head, straightening the spine, rebalancing the weight between hips, as if stillness were a matter of architecture and the body a temple that must never tilt. Now, he understands something different. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the absence of struggle. A moth lands near the lamp, its wings pulsing gently in the glow. It stays for a moment, then lifts away. The monk watches it without leaning in. It is there, then not there, just as thoughts are, just as aches are, just as every sensation arrives and passes with the same simplicity. He glances once more at the corner of the mat. It has folded slightly more now, nudged by the shifting weight beneath him. He does not press it down. He doesn't even think to. His breath flows easily, no longer counted, no longer confined. The silence is not something he maintains. It is something that has arrived because there is nothing left to resist it. In this stillness, he sees the faces of those he once taught, some eager, some anxious, some earnest to get it right. He remembers how they asked for the exact way to hold the hands, the exact length of the breath, the exact number of bells before standing. And he remembers how often he had answered. Now, he wonders if he should have told them instead to sit with one corner folded, to let something always be imperfect so they would have something to make peace with. Outside, a soft rustling begins in the trees. Not wind, not animal, just the forest turning in its sleep. The monk hears it, accepts it, and continues sitting. Not perfectly, but completely. The night has deepened. Even the forest seems to exhale more slowly now. Outside, the moon is rising not brightly, not boldly, but softly, as though it too understands that nothing tonight needs to be illuminated. The straw mat beneath the monk holds the imprint of his body, like water remembers the curve of a passing hand. He remains seated, but something in him has finished, not the practice, just the effort. He looks once more at the corner of the mat, still curled, still silent, still entirely itself, and for the first time, he feels something not about the mat, but about his relationship to it, a quiet tenderness, not for what it is, but for what it has taught him by refusing to change. He knows now not everything crook must be straightened, not every moment of thought needs to be cleared, not every practice must be polished into stillness. Sometimes it is enough to simply remain. The candle has burned low to its final breath. The flame dances once more and slips into darkness, not with drama, but with ease. The monk does not reach for another. He does not need to see. He closes his eyes. His hands rest unevenly on his knees. His robe is slightly wrinkled at the edge. His spine leans just a little to one side. But he is here, completely, in a silence that welcomes the unpolished, in a body that no longer tries to arrive, on a mat that never needed to lie flat to be a place of peace. And now, dear one, you may rest too. Let your own mat be imperfect. Let your mind curl gently like the edge of straw. Let each breath come not because you force it, but because it returns to you like a friend. There is nothing more to adjust, no thought to flatten, no sound to chase. Only stillness, only night, only this breath. Let go now.